Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. In the last few days, there's been a lot of attention about us sharing SNAP data, or 3 squares, or what was previously known as food stamps, with the federal government. It's unfortunate that much of what we've heard in the outrage hasn't mentioned the legal obligation we have as a state to provide the information, because this is a 100% federal program. We just administer it. Now, most of you know I've never been a fan or supporter of the president or his tactics, but I do have respect for the position and the rule of law. So with that in mind, we have to be judicious about what we comply with and what we strongly oppose with, especially when there is clear harm done to Vermonters. But I don't believe pushing back in this case would help in any way and get us any further, because the law that has been in place for decades is clear. And by not complying, we could risk benefits that thousands of vulnerable Vermonters rely on. I also believe the anger and outrage on both sides don't serve Vermonters or Americans well, because regardless of who's in office, the reality is we need to find ways to work with them, whether we like it or not, so we can deliver for our constituents. My strategy has been to be objective and call balls and strikes, and we'll continue to separate rhetoric from reality and make decisions based on what's in the best interest of Vermont and our values. And we've seen how it's possible, like with the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funding, or CDBG, which was passed by Congress in December, bringing over $67 million to flood-impacted communities in Vermont. These grants, which are in response to the July of '23 floods, will help ease the financial burden many towns continue to face, even 2 years later. This funding will go to counties identified as the hardest hit, with 80% of it going to Lamoille and Washington. And this funding gives us a chance to harden infrastructure and build housing out of the floodplain, because as we see more and more of these intense and isolated storms in Vermont, we need to adapt and mitigate the impacts as much as possible. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Recovery Officer Doug Farnham.
Thank you, Governor. So I'd like to provide you with a high-level status update on our recovery efforts. I would encourage people to visit disasterrecovery.vermont.gov. It's a website we created to serve as a hub for recovery. Many of the programs are run at different agencies and have information that changes over time, but that landing site, if you don't know which program to go to, is a good place to start. It also has a 2-year look back on it, which has some data and statistics, as well as some stories about flood survivors and recovery efforts over the last several years. On the municipal recovery side, we are continuing to work with FEMA. Most of our engagement at this point is with FEMA Region 1, and we've had great conversations moving forward our complex projects, the Capitol Complex, the wastewater facilities in Hardwick, Ludlow, and Johnson. A lot of money, of course, tied up in those big repairs, but we're continuing to make progress with FEMA, and we're heartened that they are really trying to help us get to a number that they will work with us on. And we are continuing to see funds flow through to our municipalities and to the state from the 23 and 24 floods. So that's great to continue to work with our partners at FEMA. On the individual side of the table, we have actually had 16 buyouts close at this point. And we are working on coordinating the demolition efforts. So the closings have occurred, the homeowners have gotten their funding, and they are able to move forward with their lives and try to find a new location, or if they've already identified one. So that's a great step forward. We have 12 closings that are scheduled between now and mid-September. So we would always love to be farther along than we are, but it is, I think, great to see some of those closings happen. And we have submitted all of the buyouts that were submitted to the state. Those have been submitted to FEMA at this point in time. We had to repackage some things over the summer and resubmit in early August to get our final package of buyouts submitted under the rules and regulations of FEMA. But we do have all of those in front of FEMA at this point. We're continuing to prioritize buyouts as our top priority with our hazard mitigation funds, and then floodplain restoration, risk reduction right behind those. So once our buyouts have all gone through, we'll be able to allocate funds to some of those floodplain restoration projects. We have 9 long-term recovery groups around the state that are supporting hundreds of Vermont households, in addition to 2 disaster case management programs run by grants from FEMA that are still operating. So the general range of Vermonters supported by those LTRGs, long-term recovery groups, and the case management teams, Capstone runs one of those teams, is right around 200 at the moment when you count all of the households between 2023 and 2024. And of course, there's a decent amount of overlap there with households that are going through the buyout process and still need that disaster case manager support. I would say with the long-term recovery groups, I continue to be extremely grateful for the efforts. Those are primarily volunteer-driven and funded by donations in many cases. So the long-term recovery groups are a critical aspect, and they really bring that community perspective and local support to our recovery efforts. So they're absolutely central in our efforts. And the Vermont Community Foundation has been critical as well in supporting those long-term recovery groups, essentially accepting donations and making sure those funds are deployed. So if you made donations over the last several years to flood recovery efforts to the Community Foundation, you should know those have been going out productively, those have been changing lives, those have been helping the long-term recovery groups repair flood survivors' homes where repair and mitigation is possible. I'd like to say that the impacts of the 2023 and 2024 floods were made so much worse than they needed to be by the existing state of the housing market before those floods. The flood survivors, people displaced, people that at least even temporarily had to move out, in many cases had little to no options within their own community and were displaced, dislocated outside of their communities. And that's a very difficult thing for a Vermonter. We are very tight communities socially. We tend to really rely and have a lot of our identity related to the town that we're in, and we care about where we live. So having to move out of state or having to move 20, 30 miles away is very challenging for most people, and I think particularly challenging for Vermonters. So the best thing we can continue to do, and one reason
The state was able to identify counties that we felt outside of those were also significantly impacted. Those counties will receive $13.5 million of the distribution. And those counties are Caledonia, Orleans, Rutland, Windham, and Windsor counties. So throughout this summer, our department has worked with all eligible communities and the partner organizations in those communities to support them in developing pre-applications to these funds. Just this past week, on Tuesday the 5th, we reached the deadline for submitting those pre-applications, and our efforts clearly yielded significant results. So the engagement has resulted in over 60 pre-applications coming from about 25 municipalities and regional partner organizations. That's very exciting, and it's rewarding that our engagement has yielded that much. But the reality is that's also daunting because the need and the request far exceed the funding available. So to give you a sense of the makeup of the pre-applications that we're seeing, and again, this is preliminary, staff is actively reviewing these pre-applications, but the majority of these pre-applications are, as CRO Farnham indicated, housing focused, many of them direct housing or infrastructure to support housing. In some communities, these would be transformative and would actually really breathe a lot of life into flood impacted and flood vulnerable communities. A significant number of these pre-applications were focused on infrastructure as well, so road and culvert repair and replacement, as well as the relocation in some communities of municipal assets. There are a number of pre-applications that focus on forward-looking planning and improving our ability to adapt and respond in the moment, anticipating future events. So the next steps are as follows. At this moment, the department staff is actively reviewing these pre-applications as rapidly as possible. Again, we are trying to be thorough and make sure that communities feel the necessary engagement, but we're also trying to do this with some urgency so that we can get these dollars out very quickly. And we've done so at a pace, we've outpaced many of the other states that have received these funds. After this initial review, we will have evaluated these based on eligibility. And as a reminder, the eligibility is there has to be a direct tie to the July 2023 floods. That was FEMA Disaster Declaration 4720. There also needs to be portfolio-wide across our investments. These need to primarily benefit low and moderate income households. Following that review for eligibility, our team will work with communities who will now be able to move into the application stage. They will automatically have applications opened. At this point, we will continue to work with them. And we are aiming to finish that review before the end of this month so that throughout the month of September, we can coordinate directly with all these communities who move forward with applications so that they can meet the application deadline of the end of September, September 30th. Following that, we're going to expedite review of the final application so that we can make awards before the end of November. There's substantial information. You can find both guidance as well as broader public hearing information on our website. It's going to be at accd.vermont.gov under CDBG Disaster Recovery. Turn it back to the governor now.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Doug. We'll open up to questions.
Has there been any conversation about lowering the water level of the flood control dam?
I think it's being done naturally right now. We're seeing very low levels at this point in time, but we anticipate if we're seeing that there's going to be an intense storm, I mean, we try and do what we can to make sure that we have the storage capacity to take care of that, but nothing active at this point that I know of.
I read in the flood, I think in 23, that the Marshfield Dam sluice movable part of the dam, that they're afraid to put it down because if they did, they didn't think they could lift it back up again. Is that so?
I don't know. I hadn't heard that, but it could be. I don't know that, but I could have probably somebody from Secretary Moore, maybe from A&R.
Okay. And
USA.
ancient history is the Federal Post Office building ever done?
I mean, I hear that it's up for sale, and but I haven't heard any movement on that. I haven't been in any talks about that. As you
Is
might
that a
remember.
tear down?
I don't, in my opinion, I don't think it has to be, no. I believe that it could be utilized.
This community development block grant program isn't new, but is it taking on a different weight or a different meaning, maybe, given the future of FEMA, sort of what role the federal government will play going forward?
We were pleasantly surprised to see that they were following through on their pledge to give us this money. As we've seen, there's been a lot of recapturing of money and slowing down some of these funds. So we were pleased to see that we were going to receive that money. And maybe, I don't know. I haven't heard what approach they're taking. At some times, we've heard that they might even disband with FEMA in its entirety and put that burden onto the states, which it depends on how they do that. But as I've said before, FEMA is very, very good at the response. It's the recovery part that they stumble a bit. And so we've offered areas of improvement through the National Governors Association and directly with FEMA. So we'll see what they do from here.
Douglas, can you talk about how damage assessments are coming from the July 10th event and whether or not you think there's going to be a request submitted?
Yeah, I can give one quick update there, as well as just adding on to what the governor said about the relationship between FEMA and CDBG-DR. For scale, this $67 million is extremely important, but it is related to around $600 million of estimated public assistance damages that will flow through the Stafford Act FEMA structures. That ratio isn't that far outside of the norm of CDBG being 10, 20% of the public assistance damages. So CDBG-DR is great. It is flexible money and is intended to be for states to put towards the remaining priorities, but it certainly isn't. It isn't on the same scale, honestly, as FEMA public assistance. As far as the July 10th event goes, DPS-VEM is continuing to conduct damage assessments because that was a single county event. There's I think they want to make sure the packet is complete and full and accurate before submitting it to FEMA. So we're still evaluating in order to construct a submission.
And even if it's a single county event, does the per capita damage amount have to be on a statewide basis in order for?
It's related to that per capita calculation for that county. So
Just for the county?
Right. Lamoille County had an event last year that was a single county event. Very similar in process. We had to request an extension in order to submit that disaster declaration request.
And do you have a timeline for when you'll know whether or not it's worth an application?
Not at this time, but yeah, sorry.
It's been 2 years, since the 23 flood. What does this inability, you're enthusiastic or encouraged by FEMA's response for the Capitol complex, but it's been 2 years now. What has that done to the timeline of ultimately restoring and having this whole complex made whole again?
So I'd say the practical realities of a lot of that are that we've continued to run, the building we're in right now is being run by external chillers and HVAC supplemental systems. So our internal systems within this building are not functioning at the moment. We're continuing to incur a temporary expense, which FEMA is supporting us in at the 90-10 cost share. I think with the Waterbury complex, we were hoping to beat the timelines as far as reconstruction. We're not beating them at this point, right? We're about the same place we were in the reconstruction of the Waterbury complex in those discussions with FEMA in trying to reach an agreement. So I think that, and this is also, the Capitol complex has the additional layer of being a historic district, being important to the state as the capital. So I do think, would we have loved to reach agreement on FEMA on the numbers before now? Absolutely. But I don't think it'll impact the long-term viability of the project. We know that we're committed to the Capitol complex, and we know that we're going to repair these structures. Yeah, and I do think, yeah.
Do you think we're looking at the construction of a new building as well?
We're looking at all options on how to most properly recover. And I think one of our main priorities is making sure that our mechanicals, our electrical will not be exposed to anywhere near the same level of risk in the future. And there's a couple different ways to achieve that. But then we lose space within some of the buildings, and we have to come up with a way that makes sense within the complex to accommodate that. So I wouldn't say we definitely haven't landed on any one particular approach yet.
How does remote work and the fact that a lot of these offices are empty and we've got empty office space all across the state? I mean, how does that sort of play into the calculus of how you guys are planning and thinking about this?
Well, certainly, remote work has been helpful during this time, but we have plans to bring people back, at least part-time. So we are hopeful in the next few months to roll out our program about how to bring people back into the offices. So we'll need office space here to accommodate them. So we think we can do this. I just want to make sure that I don't anticipate this building or any building of this size, 133, or any of those buildings will be deconstructed. We'll be reconstructing them here and improving the infrastructure within to mitigate any future damage due to storms. So, but there may be a couple of other buildings that on the other side of State Street that will be probably coming down, the smaller ones, or moved.
Can you talk a little bit more about that plan to bring these employees back to the office?
I'm not ready.
What
Yeah,
role the SEA will play in that?
Well, we'll be interacting with them, but again, we'll be rolling out a plan to bring them back. So the details will follow, but it'll be in the next few months.
Is that because the current situation is not working well? Why would you want to change what is now the status quo?
We've seen there is a bit of a loss of the camaraderie in some of getting people back together. I think, and some people do it well and others don't. So we just think that it's time, and it won't be back full time. We'll still have remote work for some, but I think that we'll get the best results from bringing back people into the office so they can interact with one another.
Vermont was put on a short list of sanctuary jurisdictions. You've been clear you don't think that's accurate, but have you received any communications from the federal government?
I have not received anything directly, and I still don't feel we are a sanctuary state.
So no indication at this moment what impact that designation could have?
Yeah, I have no idea. Again, we do not get in the way of the federal government with them taking care of any immigration issues. So Vermont's state law doesn't impede them from doing their job.
Have you talked to the president since he returned to office?
I have not.
The DOC's MOU with ICE is either about to lapse or recently lapsed. Has there been any change in posture as it relates to the way in which DOC is going to partner with ICE to detain people here?
Yeah, there's two separate agreements. There's the ICE agreement and there's the Marshals agreement, and they're both going to be lapsing soon. So we're in conversation with them. I have said before that I believe that we should continue we would like to renew the Marshals agreement, but also the ICE agreement I think is important, as we found in some of the detainees' reaction to staying in Vermont. That was advantageous for them. So we're just still negotiating that contract and may be lumping the two together. I don't know. But I think that it's important for us to do our part, but also to protect those here in our state that are detained.
Do you have thoughts on the ongoing drama with ICE using the Burlington airport?
I don't have any more than what I've seen in some of the reports that you've reported on. So I'm not aware of what they're doing or not doing.
What do you think of ICE using BTV as a conduit through which to send detainees out of state?
I mean, I guess they could drive them to Boston. I don't know what the difference is if they're going to move them someplace else. That's their prerogative. But we'd like them, again, that's why it's important, I believe, for us to have a detainee system that we have in place, and to negotiate something with the feds for the marshal's contract and the ICE contract.
Is there a noticeable difference in dealing with FEMA with the change of administrations?
It's become more complicated. I think there are fewer people. Obviously, we got to know a number of them over the last couple of years, but again, in terms of the rapport, I think we still have a good rapport with them. I think there was a meeting even over the last couple days with them. So in that respect, no difference.
Did you go to the governor's conference in Colorado?
I did.
Governor Poulos was introducing some new education thoughts out there. Did you?
He's been,
Take
that
that
was
in.
his initiative over the last year. He's an outgoing chair at this point, and he did share some of that. He also had a conversation with Robert Kennedy Jr. And a give and take session with him on the stage. So it was that was interesting. We also had Linda McMahon there, as well as Dr. Oz, and I. Myself and Governor Green oversaw that portion of the agenda.
What did you think of Poulos' thought on education?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is good information. We'll try and do what we can. Obviously, we have a lot going on that front, so
Yes.
so we will utilize any of the good information that he brought forth, and he's given us all the data and the information that he's correlated over the last year, and we'll use what we can.
Are you going to renew the contract for the Core Civic Prison in Mississippi?
I haven't heard anything about that, so I don't even know when that is
September
up.
21st, I read.
I
It's 2 one-year options.
see. I have no reason to believe we won't, but I haven't heard anything
I've
else.
heard complaints about food and healthcare and distance. I mean, it's a long way for anybody
Yeah.
to visit their children.
Yeah, no, I understand
Or
that,
siblings.
but we're dealing with the system we have. We're trying to facilitate building a new women's correctional facility and running into some headwinds there, so difficult to expand here in Vermont.
What sort of headwinds?
They don't want it in their
Nobody
community.
wants a prison there.
I mean, that's been, the standard for a number of years, decades. It's just one of those things.
Sorry. I was talking with a SNAP recipient this morning who feels personally let down by the state's decision to share her information with the federal government. She's worried about what they're going to do with that information. And I'm wondering if you have any concerns at all about what the Trump administration might do, maybe not tomorrow,
Yeah.
maybe not 6 months from now, but might do one day with that sensitive personal information.
I guess I'd ask, like, what personal information is she concerned with?
Social security number, address.
I mean, last I knew, the federal government's the one that issues social security numbers. They have that information. I mean,
They actually
have-
don't. The
they have-
USDA does not have that
Well,
information.
they-
That's what the
they have-
Privacy Law Act is
but-
designed to do, is to create very clear and well-defined statutory guardrails around which federal agencies have access to that sensitive personal information. And USDA does not have that information right now.
I had understood that within the last 8 years that there was a vote in Congress to allow for that sharing of information, but I can check with Jay on that.
What law were you referencing in the release, that 2018 law?
It was a vote by Congress that put guardrails and enhance that information that the federal government was entitled to.
So you don't think that the federal government will, that this in any way increases access to information that they didn't already have?
Yeah, I don't know what they will do with it, but I just know that they're entitled to it. And I don't know how we can resist when they have the information, they have the ability to get the information. So I'm not sure what benefit it will have to not give them what they are entitled to.
It's an active legal question, right? You've got a smart legal team, and they've come to one conclusion. There are a lot of other smart lawyers out there that are arguing to the contrary. Why not let that legal question become settled before you hand over the information?
Well, I think there are a number of states who have moved forward, all blue states, I believe, have moved forward with some sort of a lawsuit, and we'll see how that plays out.
But why wouldn't you wait to see how that legal question, that active legal question, is settled?
Again, I'm not going to sign on to every single piece of a lawsuit on everything that the Trump administration does. I just don't think that helps the situation whatsoever. And again, I go back to, I believe they're entitled to the information. That's what our lawyers think. And I just don't think it's beneficial to resist every single thing that comes out. Otherwise, it's going to be a long 3.5 years.
Well, Treasurer Pichek said Vermonters now will have to worry about persecution and surveillance from the Trump administration because they chose to trust state government to protect their data. Is he wrong?
Well, I don't think it's as easy as that. Otherwise, we wouldn't give the federal government any information. We wouldn't work with them on any issues if that were the case. If people don't trust the federal government at all, then we're in big trouble. And if they're counting on the little state of Vermont to protect them from everything the federal government does, I just think I don't believe they're being realistic. But we have to trust our government. We have to trust the process. We have to trust Congress. We have to trust our elected representatives. And if we don't, it's an unraveling of our democracy.
I mean, given what you've seen the Trump administration do over the last 6 months with personal data, do you trust them?
Again, I think they have the information now. So I don't know that it's going to make any difference whether I trust them completely or not. They have the information.
Yeah, but do you trust them? I mean, there's a core issue here, whether or not you trust the federal government.
I trust them in some ways. I don't trust the actions of the president at times. I don't believe that his tactics are fruitful, and I think that it does lead to mistrust, and I think that's unfortunate. But I think there are a lot of good people in government, and I believe that we have to trust somebody. So we'll continue to, as I said before, I'm going to call balls and strikes. We're not going to oppose every single issue that the federal government brings up, but at the same time, we will take action and push back when necessary. Well, the National Guard was one area that it just didn't make sense to me. And to have 12 National Guard members deployed, pull them out of their jobs and have them deployed for a year in St. Albans just didn't make any sense to me. So we pushed back there. And there'll be other areas where we're going to push back. But again, it's not going to be it's not going to be a knee-jerk reaction to every single issue.
And Governor, you don't have any indication from the USDA or another federal agency as to how this data will be used, correct?
I do not. I believe that they'll be cross-correlating and making sure that there's no fraud involved and no duplications.
Governor, on a side topic, the emergence of AI is causing states to really grapple with how much energy we use and how much we produce. Some companies, some states are turning to small nuclear. How have you been thinking and feeling about nuclear in the decade plus since Vermont Yankee was decommissioned?
Well, as one of 4 senators who voted against closing of Vermont Yankee, or not allowing them to make application to the PUC, I've always been an advocate for nuclear, safe nuclear. It doesn't, there's no carbon emissions that are, and I asked him that very question. He's bullish on AI and thinks we should just jump in. And I'm, a little bit more cautious, as you might imagine, in terms of, some regulation on that. And I had a lot of questions in that regard. But one question I asked them at the end was, what are we going to do about the power situation? Because I'm hearing that it takes an incredible amount of energy, electricity, to run AI, and we're struggling right now to keep up with what we have. We don't have the infrastructure for that. And I'm hearing that some of the bigger companies are buying even coal plants to fire up some of these facilities for AI. And he said he hadn't heard anything about that. And that was about it. But I still remain very concerned about that aspect and a little bit of regulation, which, I want to give great credit to ADS, our secretary, Denise Riley Hughes. She's been on the forefront of this and working with other states through the NGA to talk about how do we protect our constituents with AI and making sure that we have enough regulatory reform to do that. So they're working on that part. But the power aspect, I think, is real.
Are you planning on putting forward any recommendations or any initiatives to state lawmakers? I know we have the renewable energy standard. I don't believe nuclear is considered clean or part of. Just where do you see this being part of our portfolio, if at all, going forward?
I think they're even staunch environmentalists. There are a few that would say nuclear needs to be part of the conversation. So we'll see where this goes. I don't know if we in this state, maybe a smaller nuclear operation would be viable. And we're working with, the other New England states to talk about this. So we've had conversations. I know New York is interested. I know Connecticut's interested. So we'll continue to work with our partners in the Northeast to see what's viable and what makes sense.
Let's go to the phones real quick. Keith, Rutland Herald.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Governor. I had heard that Associate Justice William Cohen is going to retire in December. I think you had appointed him to the Supreme Court there. I just wanted to get a comment on his time and tenure and retirement.
Yeah, he was a great appointment. We're losing 2 justices about the same time. So we'll be reviewing some of the applicants. The Judicial Nominating Board has sent us a number of qualified candidates. They did a great job, I think, and we'll be interviewing them. So we'll have to fill both of those slots, but big shoes to fill in both those regards. And I pointed to both of them to the Supreme Court, which tells you about a little bit about my longevity, I guess.
Thank you.
Ed, Newport Daily Express.
No questions at this time, thank you.
As you build state budget for next year, are you thinking you're going to recommend any appropriations for school construction?
We'll see. Again, we have not really begun. I mean, we're starting to put the architecture in place, but we'll have to just see where we end up. I think school construction is going to be very important once the lines are drawn and we move forward and see where these the smaller number of supervisory unions will be. And I think that there's going to be some consolidation along the way somewhere. And that's an appropriate time to talk about school construction, but we should be prepared for that, and I realize that. But I don't know, I think we'd be putting the cart before the horse in terms of school construction in the next year or so.
Senator Scott Peck says that likely on the first day of the session, people are going to be putting forward their own maps. Like the House will have one, Senate will have one, maybe not even looking at what this task force puts forward. Do you see it that way, and will you and your administration be making your own map?
Well, we hope that this committee will come up with a map that we can all get behind. But I think I am a little concerned, admittedly, about mission creep here. I think this committee should focus on drawing the lines and not worrying about everything else that they asked us about yesterday. There was a 5 or 6 page list of information that they wanted, and I think a lot of it is outside of what they need to draw the lines. So I'm a little concerned about them slowing the process down, but maybe they'll rally in the near future. I have a great deal of respect for my I guess person that I picked for the committee, Dave Walk, and he's been in the legislature, obviously was president of the Castleton University and a Secretary of Education under Governor Dean. So he has a lot of history, and I think that hopefully they'll listen to him and move forward with this in a way that we can all get behind.
Governor, another side topic. Of course, John Murad is stepping into the DOC commissioner role. Especially with the problems facing DOC right now. What are you expecting from him at this time? As he steps into that new position.
Well, he's a very competent administrator, and I believe that he's working with Nick at this point over the next week or two, and learning the ropes and understanding the issues, and I expect him to carry forward some of what Nick put into place, and probably come up with a number of initiatives of his own in terms of bettering our correctional department.
Governor, are you concerned that the judicial nominees that you are sent are too unwilling to impose bail and to incarcerate in general? And do you expect any big public safety initiatives in the next legislature? And I'm sorry, Mr. Press Conference in Newport.
Are you talking about the Supreme Court?
Actually, no.
You're talking about just
Yeah.
for the Superior Court. I ask a lot of questions during that, and the ones that I appoint, I feel will follow through on some of what we would like to see. And bail reform is one that is important to us. So we'll see what happens in the future, but I'm satisfied to the most extent to some of the choices we made. But we have a pardon the pun, but we don't have much of a bench here in Vermont in some respects because of the workforce challenges we have. We just don't have enough. We have a lot of qualified people, but when I get to the number of nominees that the Judicial Nominating Board forwards, sometimes they're in the single digits. There's just 3 or 4. So I was pleased to see the vast number for the Supreme Court, but we need more competent judges. We need to move the court docket faster than we are today, and I'm hoping that's one of the questions I ask every single one of them. How do you intend to do this? And so again, we're way behind in that regard. So we need good, competent people and with a good work ethic to get this accomplished.
So you said it was Justice Cohen, and who's the other justice?
Is that public?
Justice Carroll.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it was public. I think it was, because she was before Justice Cohen.
Are you concerned about the new tariffs placed on Canada and what that will
Yeah.
do to Vermont's business climate?
Yeah, I've been concerned about tariffs since it was brought up in the beginning. I'm not a big fan of utilizing tariffs in the way that the president is utilizing them today, and I do think it's going to have, it already has had an effect on our rapport with Canada and our trade, tourism in particular. And so I look forward to them coming to some agreement, but I think it's going to be a while before they start trusting us again. Their feelings are hurt. It's just been done. It's just always the how in terms of this president, from my perspective. It isn't as though I disagree with everything he says. It's just how he goes about it. And I think that he offended Canada, and that was unfortunate.
Time for a couple more.
Well, they were just about done.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like there's a couple more.
Well, does the rescinding of the federal ban on the sale of gas-powered cars, will that be affecting Vermont's, we're, I guess, currently still kind of on that track?
Well, the executive order that I put into place did just that, so I'm not sure that it's going to have any effect, but again, I'll check with Secretary Moore to see, but I don't believe that it
Thank you.
affects us.
How do you expect the rolling back of the federal subsidies for solar in the Big Beautiful Bill to affect Vermont and our jobs? I think we have per capita some of the highest per capita working in the solar industry.
I had a conversation with Senator Sanders last night about this issue. I don't believe that was in that reconciliation bill. That I think they just took it upon themselves, from what I've heard, that they were just going to recapture those dollars. That's an area that if they move forward, and again, I'm not, and Senator Sanders isn't sure either whether this is a done deal, and but if they do notify us and say that we're not getting the money that we're contemplating and assured we get, because we've been working on this for almost 2 years now, put a lot of time and effort into this, dealing with the EPA, which isn't easy to get to where we are today. So this would be an area that we would probably work with the Attorney General to file suit if that comes to be. But we'll find out. I'm going to reach out to the EPA myself, to Lee Zeldin, and see what he has to say. And I know Senator Sanders is going to do the same.
I think it was last week you talked with Lee Zeldin up in the Northeast Kingdom. What did you talk about?
It was actually down in Fairleigh.
Fairleigh.
Yep. We talked about everything agriculture, and that was kind of a surprise on Monday when I heard that they were going to discontinue that program, the Solar for All program, because that never came up. And we had some sidebar conversations on Sunday, so I was surprised to see that. But we had a very good conversation. We had a number of farmers from all over the state. It was an honest conversation, but cordial as well, both sides. So that was the type of government that I like to see, where you listen to one another. And we'll see where they go from here, but I think they were listening to the farmers, and the farmers were listening to Director Zeldin as well.
Did he indicate any changes in the phosphorus program? I know that's, Anson told me that was.
He did not mention anything in that regard.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
That's